Move on to the next category, which is contempt. And really, that is the big one. And contempt, Gottman found, was the single most reliable indicator of the imminent divorce. And contempt is the most destructive because at its core, we are saying, we're better than you. I'm above you. I'm superior to you. And it attacks the other person's self-worth and points out their shortcomings as an opportunity to be contemptuous towards them. Some of the behaviors that demonstrate contempt are when we are disrespectful, when we are mocking, sarcasm. Oh, that was just a joke. But it was a hurtful joke that went straight into the heart, right? Condescension, again, I'm better than you. Hostile humor, name-calling, mimicking, making fun of the other person. Eye-rolling, that's a big one. They studied these couples and they watched their behavior together, and the eye-rolling was one that they particularly noted, and sneering. So the purpose of contempt is not to correct or to reconcile, it is to humiliate. And as believers, we are never, ever to do that. Because it leads to greater and greater conflict and ultimately to separation and divorce. I love Colossians, I love Ephesians, because they have such very practical things in them to really guide us in our relationships. Colossians 3:12 says, "So as those who've been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving each other." Now, I used to always smile when you read bearing with one another, but actually, when you look up in the Greek what that really means is preventing the other from falling. So it's holding them up. It's making sure that they're safe. And that's what we want to do with our spouses. We want to hold them up. We want to make sure they're safe. We want to encourage them. We want to bless them and do whatever we can to help them. Contempt grows out of a persistent habit of recalling negative things about our spouse, which builds bitterness. It also produces a feeling of superiority that blinds us to how we're harming the other person. Because when we think we're better, we don't understand how much harm we're bringing into their lives. 1 Peter 3 verse 8 says, to sum up, all of you be harmonious, sympathetic, loving, compassionate, and humble, not returning evil for evil or insult for insult, but giving a blessing instead. For you were called for this very purpose, that you would inherit a blessing.
With me. There is such power in blessing and thankfulness. There's such power in it to transform us. I always want to learn how to actually get this transformation that God says we can have into our lives. And that is one. And I did it with my son-in-law after he got married to Grace. I said, hey, Josh, we're going to do a little thing for 30 days. How did it go, Grace? How did it go? Yeah. And, it's like, it's just such a wonderful thing. And the thing of it is that you actually do still feel these things. But they just get covered up. They just get, forgotten about. And when you actually start to verbalize what you love about that person, well, it changes your heart and it changes them. So anyway, thanks. Oh. I have to make a correction. Come here, dear. No, you come here. I have to repent. So I told the story a few weeks ago about Carie and being in Israel, and I said that she was dressed inappropriately. I want you to understand, my wife is one of the most modest people in the universe. And when I was saying that, I was not saying that she was walking around, dressed like she was immodest. That was absolutely not the case. But in the old city of Jerusalem, every woman was covered completely from head to toe, and most of them had a mask over their face. And so any Western woman in that environment, no matter how well she dressed and so forth, if she didn't have clothes down to her legs, to her ankles, and to her arms. And in Meir Sharim, for instance, where there's the Orthodox Jews, if a woman walks through there and she has even her wrist not covered, they actually stone her. They start throwing stones and force her out of that area. And so please, she said to me, well, I'm concerned that somebody might think that I was kind of being a really immoral woman by dressing this horrible way. So I'm very, very sorry.
Oh, you're sweet. That was supposed to be a private conversation. But you know how that goes, eh? You get a little window in here. So, let's say, stonewalling. Now I was really good at that. Like, I can't really talk about it, and so let's just leave this conversation. But what I've learned is, when the emotions rise, and they get to a certain point, and you feel you're going to do things or say things that are very unkind, that is the point where you say, let's take a break. I will come back and I will continue this conversation with you when I'm feeling kinder. That's been a very, just a life-changing thing for me. And because if I say I'm leaving this conversation, we may never pick it up again. But if I say to Leonard, okay, I'm feeling very emotional right now, and I just can't really handle this very well. And so can we just take a break right now, and we'll come back when I'm feeling a little calmer. Then we're able to talk things over and communicate in a helpful way where we can resolve the issues that we're dealing with, because lots of things in life are difficult, right? There are difficult conversations and arouse emotions. So, okay, so then right now we'll just discuss these 4 behaviors that predict divorce and the ways that we can overcome them. Let's just spend a little time in our groups and just talk about that a little bit more, and then we'll end it off. And then maybe next time around we'll do the love languages, because they're very helpful.